Go back with the thing here. All right. Well, I want to say that Steve Forbes, we're going to try to have him on later in the week, but you know what? It's Christmas Eve. I know I normally do 12:30 Monday, and we had promoted it, but unfortunately did not have him on. So, but as I said, we're going to try to have the ETSU. He'll be on in the future, but we'll try to set that up. So now to talk about all the Southern Conference action, it is the man from MidMajorMadness.com, SoConJohn Hooper. I know that you, to begin with, we could talk ETSU, but I really thought two big stories in the SoCon. First, last week, Chattanooga hires a new coach. But second of all, and I think this one is the real, generally, Southern Conference story, Furman falling from the ranks of the unbeaten. And then they only got 2 votes for the top 25, and that's not to say fell out of the top 25, but they only got 2 votes. They got 1 more vote than the New Jersey Institute of Technology and San Francisco.
Ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I guess my thought was, first of all, yes.
If you're going to give them 2 votes, that they lose the game.
But it just shows me a little bit about the, still the lack of respect, I guess, with the Southern Conference. I know it's not the SEC. I know it's not the ACC, but it was a top 10 earlier. This is a team that beat Villanova. Just thought, what were your thoughts? First of all, you've written about it, the LSU Furman game. Give us your take on it.
Well, I was there, and let's be honest, LSU's big men were superior. They had, it wasn't necessarily that. I think the score is not indicative of how close the game was, because I think they pulled a little bit away when Clay Mounts fouled out with 5:53 remaining. But I think that LSU was better at knowing, they were better at being physical. I think they were better at, at the 3 and 4 positions for most of the night. And I think that made a difference. And I also think Vermont Waters is probably one of the quickest point guards in the country. And that gave Furman some issues. But I also think that Furman probably, that was their worst shooting night of the year. And they were missing open shots. So, I mean, that's going to happen in basketball. But I do think LSU had the recipe for success, and they executed it well, and credit to them. I think they're a good basketball team. But on the same hand, I would say Furman didn't play that well, but I think you got to credit LSU for what they did.
Now, LSU had been ranked earlier, although not now in the top 25. By the way, if you missed it, Tennessee is still number 3. They got the second most first place votes.
They weren't ranked number 1, like you said.
Yeah, well, that was there were some columnists looking to that, and I'm not sure that the Vols aren't the best team in college basketball right now. I mean, only 1 loss, and it's to Kentucky, but Michigan is undefeated, and so is Virginia.
I would put them in, from what I've seen, I would say Tennessee and Michigan are the 2 best teams in college basketball.
Are you, Caleb Calhoun, all for Tennessee.com, thinks that Duke is winning or getting the votes because of their status as a program? Are you in agreement?
I agree with that. But I don't think they're better than Tennessee or Michigan.
All right. That's the key. I got to tell you, I mean, the Marky Billson, how do I rank these things? Give me votes. I still would have taken Kansas ahead of Tennessee because they had the same amount of losses, and the Tennessee loss was to Kansas. So you can tell me it's in overtime. You can tell me that Grant Williams fouled out. I mean, well, so what if Grant Williams fouled out? It's a part of the game, But we're talking about the Southern Conference. And, yeah, if you want to know, Duke's number 1, Michigan's number 2, and Tennessee, although getting 12 first-place votes to Duke's 35, and the 12 first-place votes were the second most in the AP poll. They're number 3, and it's followed by Virginia. Virginia Tech, by the way, number 10.
Very good basketball team, Virginia Tech.
That's gotta wait for when those 2 teams play in the Old Dominion. I gotta look for that one. That'll be kind of exciting here. We're talking a little bit about Furman. They lose to LSU. They drop out of the top 25. what do you think the chances are that the SoCon can reemerge in the top 25? I mean, it's not as if these are poor teams, but you got to go on a winning streak, I think, right?
Yeah, dicey, because if you look at Furman losing one game, going from 24 to getting 2 votes, I think that shows you what the voters are saying about the Southern Conference, which, to me, I mean, like, that's not, I mean, probably I would have thought Furman would drop out of the top 25, which they should, but I wouldn't think they'd get 2 votes. I mean, that's a little ridiculous to me. You beat a Villanova team who's, for instance, Buffalo's still ranked, and who have they beaten? Teams like Syracuse and West Virginia who aren't getting as many votes as Villanova, so that doesn't...
Could Buffalo have the respect of last year winning in the NCAA tournament?
Right, but this. I'm one of those people that says this is this year, not last year. You know.
Okay.
But that's just me, and in the same hand, I think Wofford's very good. I don't understand why they don't get votes. I don't understand in some points why UNC Greensboro doesn't get votes. Because I think those are 2 very good basketball teams. Even East Tennessee State, I think, is a very good basketball team. I think the top 4 in the SoCon are worthy of more respect than they get.
We're talking to SoConJohn Hooper, he of MidMajorMadness.com. He is writing, he covers the SoCon for that website, but also is just very well known around there. A couple other pieces of news out here. Francis Alonso, the sharpshooter, I think maybe the best player in the conference, in my opinion. He was named the Southern Conference Player of the Week for the men in basketball. Women's basketball Player of the Week for the second time this year. It was Amanda Thompson of the Mercer Bears. They're very
good, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, well, hey, they were ranked. There's no chance that they could call themselves the Teddy Bears in the future like they used to be, huh?
Central Arkansas, there were the Sugar Bears, right, or something.
I'm not sure. Up until 91, Mercer's women's teams were known as the Teddy Bears.
Wow.
I still loved it. I thought that was the best.
I think it's actually pretty cool.
Yes. I know there's this idea is that any more sexist than Lady Vols? I mean, I don't
guess so. I mean, like, now that I think about it, most people don't think about volunteers as smoky or whatever. But now that I think about it, yeah, I guess it's not very good thing. But
well, the
team go with that's up to them, I guess.
The team formerly known as the Teddy Bears went 2-0 victories at Howard, George Washington, and did Amanda Thompson of the Mercer team a double-double, 19 points and 15 rebounds in those 2 games, and they will be able to take on UNC Asheville, quasi-local, on December 30th. So, yeah, Amanda Thompson also was Player of the Week on December 11th.
Let's talk about Jerome Rodriguez, though. He was a Player of the Week not too long ago, and I think he's leading the nation in rebounding. Certainly, he's lived up to the billing that Steve Forbes has put upon it, I think.
I think you're correct there, and now we're going into the Southern Conference slate, and we really, this Saturday, get a chance to now see, okay, is Furman... I mean, they've only lost 1 game, but the Southern Conference schedule starts. ETSU has already suffered a loss to Wofford. So now, I don't know, is this crunch time? Is this where Jerome Rodriguez has to step up against Furman? As you said, Furman, they were outmuscled by LSU. Chance here for ETSU at Freedom Hall, maybe, with Rodriguez, with now the 7-footer Gesson. I mean, tell me a little bit what your thoughts on this upcoming matchup on Saturday is.
Okay, so an unnamed coach, after the Furman game at LSU, I'm talking to him, and I said, well, LSU's just got great athleticism and size, and you guys might not see that type of team the rest of the year. His reply was, ETSU's there.
Now that's intriguing. And this is why I am so high and so frustrated that Furman didn't get more top 25 votes, because, I mean, I thought I've said it loud and large. I've thought that Wofford was more deserving last year of an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament than Syracuse, who went to the Sweet 16. You looked at head-to-head records. Obviously, UNCG was legit. ETSU may have choked their appearance away, but it's still, they Bo Hodges and 4 newcomers that are pretty good. For that matter, Armis also is pretty good. We want to go into now, the Citadel. Now they seem to be back, and this is what Duggar Baucom wanted to do when he was there. I mean, it seems Furman now is exceeding expectations. It seems to be a pretty strong league. Even Samford has won 10 games.
Right, and they gave UNC Greensboro all they wanted on Saturday. In that ball game, and I think UNCG pulled away late to get an 8-point win, but that was a very, very much a ball game in the balance for much of the way.
Now the thing,
and I think
yes,
go ahead. That's a testament to how Stanford's recruiting.
It's very impressive because of all the players that transferred up to Louisville and such. Right. They lost 4 transfers, did Scott Padgett at Samford. So, yeah, a chance to check out this team, and Samford is also tough. They get no media attention whatsoever. There's so much.
And they don't draw flies to their game.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it's so difficult for them to get attention. Football may be a little different, but the basketball, it is tough for them to get that attention, media-wise or otherwise. I've actually gone to, say, AL.com and say, hey, would you like me to string a story from ETSU? And they're like, we really don't cover them. It's a D1 program,
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Well, I'll give you an example, Marky. Okay, so Furman played Samford in football this year. Samford didn't send radio guys.
That's amazing. I mean, it's one thing not to have the local newspaper send somebody out. Budgets, they don't do it. They do from staff reports. To
not have radio, I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of that either. I mean, that's, yeah. And I got to tell you this. I mean, in 2016, last game at the high school field that ETSU played, and J.J. German, his one game-winning kick for ETSU to beat the Samford Bulldogs 15-14. That was 2 years ago for ETSU. And I mentioned this. I counted literally 1, 2, 3, the fans in the stands in the fourth quarter. There were 549 people. Samford brought just under 200 on their side of the field.
As good as they were, and
But no, I mean, I'm saying that they brought half the crowd, admittedly a very small one, but yeah, it was announced at 6,000, but so there you go.
Right. And that's a surprise to me because ETSU had drawn so well, throughout the season.
I think a lot of it is tickets sold. There have been a lot of no-shows there. I remember going to one it's a sellout crowd. And I said, but there are only 75 people in this one section. I just counted it. I mean, because you literally can go 1, 2, 3.
I think that has something to do with Tennessee, though, honestly.
I thought it has, well, they weren't playing at the time, possibly, but that then goes into my next thing about the subservience that ETSU sometimes has against Tennessee. Actually, they have it a lot, and I don't think Furman is, say, subservient to South Carolina, or Wofford is, or so they are in the shadow, but subservient is something else. And I mentioned this because ETSU lost by 19 points, 80-61 to the Lady Vols on Friday night. Their struggles continue, 2-13. A 19-point loss to Tennessee. What's the headline? I'm holding it up here in Johnson City Press. Heads held high. When that's the headline after a 19-point loss, that's subservience. Oh, look how good they did. They only lost by 19.
You have any good program that is a program. It's just like, I taught those Furman coaches after the game. That, you can't, they wanted to win that game and they expected to win it. You have to have an expectation. You can't be happy with a 19-point loss. You can't be happy with an 18-point loss. You're never going to create a winning culture if you're happy about losing by so many points.
That was one thing I think you saw. I was talking on Twitter with Richard Sander, the former AD, and one that I think highly of, and he spoke of changing the culture at ETSU. Now, I do think that there's a more positive vibe. Yes, I will get that from the previous regime, and the previous regime was just awful. And I'm not speaking so much of Murray Bartow. I'm speaking of David Mullins and company. But, I said, wait a minute here. You want to talk about changing the culture? ETSU is winning, but they were winning before. I mean, you fired a 16-14 coach. Well,
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, what difference is the culture? The culture will change at ETSU in men's basketball when they start winning in the NCAA tournament.
True, but you also have to look at what Steve Forbes has done, I guess, in 3 years.
No, I get it, winning 25 games a year and all this, but, they won before. This has been done before. Now, you can tell me, okay, the amount of victories, Alan LaForce, I think, won 24 in back-to-back years. This is the first time you've had that in 3 straight years, okay? But,
I disagree with how they did LaForce at the end, but that's just me.
But the thing was, I got to tell you this. Did you know that he had one eligible player left on his team when DeChillis took over?
I did not know that.
There was one player academically eligible, Kyle Keaton, when Ed DeChillis took over.
And I thought he was a great player on that team.
Yes, but I mean, if you want to talk about changing the culture, back in the 90s, the feeling in Johnson City was Science Hill could beat ETSU. Now, that's appalling.
There's no way that's possible.
But you would have that on our rival station, and that was being discussed. And high school games were preempting on the radio, ETSU games, that sort of thing.
That'd be subservient to. That'd be like Furman being subservient to Greenville High School.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
No, it is, and that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like the Bucks at Freedom Hall, but which is on the Science Hill campus, because it's a reminder of those days. But that was there was a strong feeling around town. I can even remember hosting a talk show. Chip Kessler, who was the voice of the Bucks at the time, even suggesting that it might be possible for Science Hill to beat ETSU. This was 2 years after their run of force. Yeah.
That's like saying the Alabama Crimson Tide could beat, an NFL team.
Yeah.
The worst NFL team. That's about makes as much sense.
Well, have Mike Tomlin coach that NFL team, and it's possible. But anyway. Anyway.
Do a lot of things.
He'll play to the level of their opponent. Trust me on that one.
They'd have to be forced to punt in the first place.
Oh, and Raiders are 2-10. Well, anyway, let's lose to them.
But my question to you would be, okay, so what's ETSU's attendance been like so far in their non-conference game?
That's a good 3,000 plus. 3,000 plus. I mean, once upon a time they averaged 8,400.
They would almost double that against Furman, probably.
They had been doing it in the past. I know that 2 years ago the game against Furman was a 6,000 sellout. So there you go. But no, I just look at the, you talk about the culture. To my way of thinking, I was going to say the old days in the 90s, DeChillis took that team and they became a perennial conference champ. Now, they often lose in the conference tournament, but they still were winning it in the regular season. And he did it in just a few years. Now, attendance was down. I've written this for whatever reason because DeChillis was viewed as an outsider. They didn't draw. I get that. But if anybody changed,
great basketball coach.
He is. But if anybody changed the culture, I mean, there you go. He took a team 7-20, one eligible player, subservience to Science Hill, and made it into a perennial conference champ. And since that time, there have been only 2 losing ETSU seasons in 15 years. Or I would suggest Mr. Jennings. I would suggest the culture was changed by Mr. Jennings. Theoretically, maybe,
That team that was ranked in the early 90s, I think it was 90, 91, so highly, changed the culture of ETSU basketball for at least 5 years.
Well, let's also look. There one thing about the culture of ETSU basketball this past weekend was going to El Paso, assuming it exists. That's an old joke that I have.
Holding Wyoming to 3.8% shooting.
Exactly. I know that Wyoming, and we had their one of their writers on talking about how the team was basically now starting its second team. But you're talking about, yes, holding it to 3.8 shooting. I think it was the first time. There's only been like one in the history of college basketball, one half where there has been more of a better defensive effort in a half, assuming we're talking D1 basketball and such. Well, you mentioned Jerome Rodriguez and what he was able to do and such. The thought of ETSU on defense, they started Davian Williamson. They did start the 7-footer Lucas Gesson, although he only played the 9 minutes and such. Your thoughts on ETSU's defense? That was, admittedly, Wyoming was struggling, but that was a nice effort right there.
The great irony in this, don't you? There is a great irony because Steve Forbes, talking to him in the preseason, thought that they might be more of an offensive team and have to work up defensively a little more. So, I think that maybe the shooting comes around in the long run, according to what Steve Forbes had told me, and that they're a little ahead of the game defensively. So that should be an encouragement, I guess, to ETSU fans, because last year's defensive mindset was so good, and then you look at the team before that, the prior season. Their thing was they could just outscore you.
Mm-hmm.
So and they shot at such a high percentage. So it's interesting how this team is kind of materializing as the season goes along. But I think a lot of that. I mean, getting the big Dutchman, I guess, eligible, and now having guys like Malad Darmus and Jerome Rodriguez really gives you an international front court, right?
Not only that, how much I like it when you call him the Dutchman. You know what a fan I am of Norm Van Brocklin and Bert Blyleven. Anyway, which is true. By the way, 1 for 26 officially, 1 for 11 from from outside the arc for Wyoming. Now, I will say this, part of the reason had to be that Hunter Thompson, who is their star forward, was in foul trouble because he actually had a very nice shooting day, 8 of 9. How much of a defense, how much Justin James, the guard for Wyoming, just couldn't, he's a backup. He shouldn't be in the lineup, and he was 3 for 21. If he's being a Tim Smith type ball hog and not able to make it, well, there you go. But it's got to be part of the story as well. But still, say what you will, but yes, a nice effort in the first half for ETSU. And although I didn't think much of the talent in that Sun Bowl tournament, you win 2 games demonstratively. That's what you're supposed to do, that sort of thing.
But it's confidence that matters, I think. And you're correct. Those 2 teams weren't as talented as you might like to see, but I think it's important for a team that's trying to get used to playing with each other and trying to gel towards conference play. I think that helps ETSU immensely, and I think that game against Furman will be a toss-up. I think it could go either way.
You were mentioning the physicality. We'll see now. Was it one rogue guard for Wyoming or what? Yeah. It's already 0-1, so this looks to be really exciting on Saturday. As exciting as you can get in a one-bid league, I suppose. I got to ask, though, Rusty Wright, hired as a football coach at Chattanooga. He used to be an assistant. He was a successful assistant there, but and I know you like Georgia State, but they were 2-10 this past year. Your thoughts on that hire?
I think it's a good hire. think that him being a part of some of those staffs in the past that were so successful at Chattanooga had a lot to do with him getting hired in. And I believe he was a candidate when Tom Arts was hired, if I'm not mistaken. He was a finalist for the job. So they kind of went back to who they had, I guess, interviewed before. And, obviously Rusty Wright has, deep Chattanooga ties. So that made sense to hire him. And I think one thing we should talk about next week, if we get a chance to, is the recruiting classes across the Southern Conference.
We can do that. Absolutely. Yeah, we haven't had that chance now, and I got a break here to take us out of the rest of the show. SoConJohn Hooper. Of course, that's a thing. Recruiting to me, I'm like, well, you know what? We just don't, you don't know until 4 years down the line. I mean, you just don't. And as I found, people are excited. Oh, it's a number 13 recruiting class in the country, but Tennessee has brought in. And I say to them, Derek Dooley never brought in a class ranked less than 17th. How'd that go? Tri-City Sports Now.